I think this kind of video is interesting. Is this kind of video is what made Jon Stewart's event so important. And what was interesting is that we have in the internet with forms like YouTube and blogging and things like that, it's commonly well known that the views that get to the top are normally those that are most weird or extreme. It's the kid who eats the worms gets the most views. Drinking with Bob has gotten enormous views by just screaming things about a newfound political identity. He doesn't scream about the Iraq War, or, the fact that there were no weapons of mass destruction, thousands of Americans were killed, tens of thousands of Iraqis were killed. All of that was done on debt. The fact that Bush inherited a huge surplus and ran a massive deficit up in his first year. The fact that the housing crisis, none of that. It's all about Obama, this is a global platform, and everybody knows this. And what's happening is bit by bit by bit, you're getting a trickle of these kinds of insane opinions, and the conclusion becoming both, around the world, a kind of fear that people around the world had about Americans is being confirmed, that they're nuts. I mean, generally, the dark side view of America is they're just a bunch of racist nuts. And when Obama was hired, a lot of people around the world thought, well, he has an Islamic-sounding name, he's black. You'll see hegemony power within the United States, freaks like this going nuts. Within the United States, I think it's leading to a complete, deep demoralization and a division of the country, which has been trending at some time on, sadly, ever since the election of Clinton and the Republican Party started this nightmare that, unfortunately, the American people find themselves in. What I think Jon Stewart did, and why it's so important, is that he figured out a way to use humor to release part of this tension, and also to make sort of a key message that maybe there is some hope. I mean, certainly guys like Bob drinking here are going to provoke other people, and there's going to be, there's going to be more violent attacks. There's going to be more extremism. This has been with the United States for some time, and it will continue. But maybe what we saw with Jon Stewart at one point was that, considering all the problems that we've been through before, from, when Clinton came in, there was a huge deficit already existing. We had the war in Iraq. The war in Iraq was defeat. There were no weapons of mass destruction. I mean, imagine, talk about getting peed up. We told the whole world we were going to go in there and find weapons of mass destruction and save the world, right? This is the United Kingdom and the U.S. Now, how did this affect us? Really, literally. I mean, how do you think in China, when the Chinese popular is sitting around, when they're really sitting around in China, do you think they're talking about healthcare reform? Or do you think they're talking about Iraq? I mean, stop screaming so much and think for a minute. They're talking about Iraq. When they're talking about America and what they think about America and how little they trust America and how they have to protect themselves America and how they may have to move against America, they're talking about Iraq. Iraq is the thing that has much of the world. And Iraq has also opened the opportunity to cut at American power because, first of all, it weakened our militaries so much in the countries that were involved. And secondly, it drained a lot of money before this huge recession came in. So, if you want to get pissed off about something, it's about Iraq. But, there's something, if the West maintains its moderate, I believe this is a true big letter L liberal, which at the end I am. I am not a radical. I'm not a Marxist. If we maintain those principles that really are what keeps us going, a sense of moderation, of really a kind of conservatism about change, about moderation, but multiculturalism, tolerance, liberalism. I'm very encouraged by the expansion of atheism. There's public atheism that's going on in the UK, that we're kind of throwing away forces, beliefs that make us despise each other, but still embracing multiculturalism and multi-ethnicism. if we also embrace all of this with a nature of humor, good spirits, these are the strengths particularly Americans have, their good humor, their ability, you'll be able to get through this, right? The problem I have is I don't think that a large part of the Tea Party want to get through this. I think that they are I think their numbers correspond just too closely to the number of Americans who believe that the end times are upon us, and who feel the world is going to end and Jesus is going to return within the next, say, 50 years, and really think that's cool, okay? And I think that there are too many of them in this movement. This movement has no interest in improving the lives of people, improving the economy, improving the overall situation. What they're interested in is keeping the ideological focus. So when you had a real idiot, nutcase president talking about Jesus and invading countries in the Middle East, they were happy. No matter what they say now, they were happy at the time. They're only unhappy now because they see people really can't realize Bush was an awful president. So just like they're saying they're not racist when they really are, they're also saying they didn't like Bush when they really did. They'll be happy to have a presidency. Someone like Sarah Palin will make them happy if she started talking about God and started creating international instability the way Bush did. That's what they want. They want a president who is going to facilitate the rapture, the end times. Okay? There's a mixture of that kind of end time rapture, religiosity, along with kind of racism that makes it the Tea Party up. Fiscal responsibility, dude, you know, George W. Bush came in with a surplus. The deficit was well on its way to being completely, the deficit has been taken care of for some time. The debt was being reduced. And with his first term, he had turned that up and we had $500 billion deficits per year, okay? So, I don't want to hear it. You know, I mean, literally, you had your chance almost 10 years ago to go with a vice president who had resided under a president who had accomplished this, who was committed to this, and you went with the guy who didn't seem to care that he was running the deficit up. Don't you know, you're going to change now, I mean, whatever. I mean, I think maybe they're holding it. What I wonder is, well, there's another thing about evangelicals, is they believe that no matter what happens to them in this life, when they're questioned in the afterlife, they don't have to answer because they're with Jesus, and Jesus will take that. And I sometimes wonder how that kind of belief in Jesus fills their fantasy space and enables them to forgive themselves over and over again for anything that they wish to create or fantasize, any fantasized project. I mean, they don't have to even feel guilty about the fact that they can come forward and say, you know, we're not racist. We have lots of African American and Hispanic members, and they can't produce any evidence. They can say, we didn't like Bush, we were upset with Bush. They can't prove any evidence, but they don't care, because part of the illusion of an evangelical is that truth and accountability exists for the rest of the world. All other human beings have truth and accountability. The belief of being an evangelical and believing in end times is that the world is going to be wiped out, and only because of your membership of an ideology will you survive. It won't be your acts or your it is your belonging to this particular evangelical faith that will keep you alive. And it's a kind of infantile desire of seeing the fear and the inevitability of bad things and the inevitability of death and consequences, and clinging to a kind of totem or superstition. And this is, I think, really kind of the motivation between what they want. What they really want is an end times evangelical embodiment as president.